October movie season has finally come to an end. I saw 11 movies in theaters and on streaming, and I'm going to do a tier list ranking them right now. But before we get started, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, but let's get right to the tier list. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. As I said in the intro, I'm going to be ranking all the movies I saw in October. October this year was pretty weak. We had not a lot of great movies in October, maybe just some amazing ones, and the horror movies were actually pretty weak this year. We haven't had many in October, and most of them were pretty bad, pretty generic. So hopefully next 2 months are great. Hopefully November and December are going to go great, but October, let's get right to it with our first movie. I saw Dicks the Musical. I just saw this a couple days ago, and this is from A24, and it's their first musical ever, and the trailer really caught me off guard because I like the style of everything. You know, I heard it was kind of like a Parent Trap kind of story going on with these two identical twin brothers. They each have a different parent and they're trying to reunite them together. So I went into it mostly blind. You know, I went into it in my theater. I saw it in a small theater because of course it's going to play in a small theater, and I only saw it with like 2 other people in my theater, so not a lot of people went to go see it, and it's very weird. It's probably like the most bizarre movie of the year. The writing is absolutely insane. The songs are actually kind of interesting, but I kind of got bored of the choices that they made with the songs. You know, I thought the acting was great. Some of it was a little too weird for me, though. I thought it just went a little too much over the top. Nick Offerman does have a cameo in here, and it's like the most weird cameo you'll ever see this year. Like, you would have never expected him to show up in this movie, and it's just an odd movie. Like, I could try to explain everything in this movie, but I'd probably get copyrighted because it is very explicit, very sexual in a lot of parts, and it's just, I don't know what the heck I even watched. It's going to be seared into my brain for a long time, especially that ending. The ending was so I don't even know what happened in the ending. Like, I really warn you guys to go into this movie, you know, really try to go into it with an open mind, but it will still be very weird for you. And, you know, I wish that this was shorter because I thought it just went on for a little too long. I think it could have been wrapped up in like 20 minutes less. I felt like the movie as a whole could have been like a short. It didn't need to be a whole movie. Megan Thee Stallion, though, she's in this and she owned. Her one song is absolutely amazing. I think it's the best song in the movie. She was cool. Everything else I didn't agree with. I just felt like it was just too weird for me. So Dicks the Musical, going in the bad tier. Next up we had The Exorcist Believer. This one just, oh my goodness, this one just didn't work for me at all. It was the first horror movie I watched in October because it came out at the beginning of October. David Gordon Green is behind this one. He did the Halloween new trilogy that came out. Halloween 2018 was actually really great for me. I loved it. Halloween Kills was good. I liked all the killing because that's basically what the movie was about. Halloween Ends was really disappointing because it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a start to a trilogy. And this one I went into with like no expectations because I haven't seen the original Exorcist. I still haven't seen it because this one has just been keeping me away from it because I don't want to be disappointed, because The Exorcist Believer was horrible. I didn't like it. It's just not scary at all. And, you know, the story that they tried to go with, you know, the exorcisms and stuff, these 2 girls go missing, then they get possessed, and then, you know, they do some weird things. That wasn't very interesting. I thought it would have been more interesting if they stuck to like one of the girls, and, you know, one of them's possessed, one of them is kind of dealing with this possession and trying to help him out. I felt like having 2 girls deal with the possession, you know, the parents having to deal with it, wasn't very entertaining. The story just took forever to move on, and I felt like there's 30 minutes in here that you could have cut. The first 15 minutes at the beginning, you know, they try to circle around to it at the in the third act, but I just didn't care enough in the beginning to really care about it in the third act at all. And the third act is really disappointing. They have like 2 more movies that they really want to do for this. I don't see it happening. This movie is just not going to make a lot of money, and they bought the rights for $400 million. Why would you buy the Exorcist rights for $400 million? That just seems like a waste. It's not that big of a brand anymore. Sure, it made a lot when the original came out, but I've heard the original is great. This one isn't great, and the scares just don't work. I feel like it's more funny than scary, and I don't believe what happens in this movie. It's so dumb. I wish I liked it, though. I wish it was a good horror movie, but David Gordon Green, I think he should really steer clear about horror movies after this, because I think it's just done for him. He shouldn't do any more horror movies after Exorcist Believer. Next up, those Killers of the Flower Moon. Let me just say, it's the best movie of October that you're gonna go see. A lot of people tried to not go see it because of the runtime. It is 3.5 hours, but it flew by for me on the first watch. Then the second watch, I didn't really feel it. I didn't have to go to the bathroom either time I saw it. And there's no real point to go to the bathroom. Like, you're watching it and there's no really slow point. You need to focus on every single scene. Every single scene matters. In a Martin Scorsese movie, I would say, like, in most of his movies, every single scene you have to see because it holds so much detail into the story and the characters. And this one has a lot of character development, especially with, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Lily Gladstone, and Robert De Niro being the forefront centers of the film. And everyone is amazing in this film. Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio are always amazing. They always bring in all-star A+ performances, but Lily Gladstone was the real standout for me. I thought she gave the best performance, even though she isn't really the lead of the film, I'd say. I mean, she is going for lead actress for the Oscars, but I would think of her more as a really high supporting actress in this. Maybe like a minor lead, but I wish she did have more screen time. But she is the heart and soul of the film. She really holds everything together because she is really the only person that has a good soul in this movie. Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro are kind of the villains of this story, and it's interesting to see where Martin Scorsese took this story and how it was all written. I really did like that area. Some people are really disagreeing with it, but I liked it a lot, and I love the direction by Martin Scorsese. It's hard probably to direct a 3.5-hour movie, but he did it, and he did it really well. The cinematography is off the charts. The editing in this film is so great because it keeps you entertained for those 3.5 hours. And if you don't have good editing for 3.5 hours, if every scene moves slowly, then your pace is going to move slow. But this one I have fast pace because every scene moved fast. Martin Scorsese knows how to pace a film, so Killers of the Flower Moon is going in the amazing tier. Next up is Five Nights at Freddy's. I just saw this one last night. I plan to go see it again tomorrow night, and I saw a lot of critics hating on this one. I think it has like a 20% or 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people on Letterboxd that I follow are giving it like a 1, a 1.5, or 2. I didn't think it was that bad. I went in with like zero expectations. I don't really know any of the lore, the original games of this. I only really played the one original mobile app game many years ago. It's got to be like over 8 years ago since I played that. And, I thought the game was pretty fun, but it wasn't really a story game, but I never learned about any of the lore. So I went into this not knowing any lore, not knowing really any characters or any story. All I knew is that you kind of watch the cameras for these animatronics to see if they move and wait for the jump scares and all that. And I was thoroughly entertained. I had a fun time. I thought that the script and the story was a bit messy, but it's a video game adaptation. You kind of understand that you're going to go in for that. You kind of know that it's going to be really weak in some parts, and that was the script and the story for me. I thought the acting was pretty good. It was cool to see Josh Hutcherson in a leading role because, I don't think I've seen him in a big leading role since the Hunger Games movies. Matthew Lillard, of course, Matthew Lillard is one of my favorites. I think he's really underrated. Josh Hutcherson, of course, is underrated. And, Elizabeth Lail is also in this one. She's from You. Cool to see her in this movie. She has a small role. It's an okay role for her, but it's pretty small. But Josh Hutcherson, I think, really holds the movie together. He has some really great scenes. I like where his character goes through. But a lot of the characters I really couldn't connect with. I wish I could have, but I think the movie just moves way too fast for me to connect with anyone. It's an hour and 50 minutes long, but it feels like an hour and 30 minutes. That's kind of a gripe with me. I think it should have slowed down, should have explained, the story a little bit better, should have dove deeper on these characters and these animatronics, because the third act moved really fast for me, way too fast, but I did like where they were coming from. It's a fun movie. I didn't take it too seriously. The scares didn't really work for me. I thought it was a little funny because the movie should have been rated R. I think that this story and this idea could have worked out so much better if they went a little more darker with this story, because I didn't think the animatronics were that scary. I thought it would have been fun just to hang out with them and dance with them when the music is playing, like at Chuck E. Cheese, because it's just, you can't do too much with a PG-13 rating. I know Blumhouse is doing it just so they can get more people to see it, and it is going to make a lot of money. Hoping they make a sequel. Hope the sequel is a little bit better. Hoping it's rated R, but I doubt they're going to do it. But I think it would have been better if it was rated R. So Five Nights at Freddy's going in the okay tier. Next up is Pain Hustlers. This is yet another movie that focuses on the opioid crisis and matters of that, and all the pharmacies and all that dealing with it. And Chris Evans really needs a better agent, because this movie and Ghosted are, in my bottom rankings of the year. They're not really the worst movies of the year, but they're movies that I don't like. So I think he needs a better agent, because he's had 2 bad movies this year. No good movies, I don't think. I think those are the only 2 movies I've seen from him this year. And I just can't believe how boring this movie is. David Yates is directing this. He directed many of the Harry Potter movies, Fantastic Beasts movies, and at least those are kind of entertaining. Most of the Harry Potters are actually great, but the Fantastic Beasts aren't great, but at least they're entertaining. But this one is so dull and so boring. I don't care about any of the characters, any of the story. David Yates tries to make the directing as best as he could, but the story is so boring. It's so overdone. Like, I don't need to know about these matters anymore. I think everything is just so overdone now with this. And I think if there's another like opioid movie coming out, I'm not going to watch it. I'm just choosing not going to watch it, because it's too much for me. I don't care about it anymore. And I think that the performances are good. Chris Evans actually does give a good performance. Emily Blunt also. But at the same time, I don't care about the characters, don't care about the story. And it's another Netflix dud for me, so Pain Hustlers going in the bad tier. Next up is Pet Sematary's Bloodlines. This launched on Paramount Plus. A lot of you probably have no knowledge of this movie, because it really released under the radar. There's not a lot of people that are known in this movie. I forget the one actress's name, but she's from The Gifted. I thought she was pretty good in this movie. She's probably the only great performance I saw in this movie, and probably the only person that I recognized from this movie. And the story, don't even ask me what the story is, because this movie is so forgettable. I don't know what the heck happened in this movie. I feel like it's a lot of meh kind of movie. And it's a streaming movie, of course. This just feels exactly what I think a streaming movie feels like, because the story is so forgettable and the characters are just so one note across the border, and the script is so weak. Like, everything moves so fast, but you forget about everything that happened in the last 10 minutes in this film. The action, and the kind of horror moments are interesting, but I think that, these studios should stop trying to adapt Pet Sematary, because the one with John Lithgow didn't work for me. This didn't work. I haven't seen the original, but I heard it's not great. So I don't know why they can't get the Pet Sematary storyline right in a movie, because the book is amazing. One of the best books I think I've ever read. And it's a pretty simple story. I don't know why they can't get it right. I mean, it would be cool if they get it right, but I think they should just not make any more Pet Sematary movies. It's just not working out. So Pet Sematary Bloodlines, I'm between terrible and the bad tier. I'm going to put it in the bad tier. Next up is The Burial with Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones. And I will say Jamie Foxx is electric in this movie. He brings in a powerhouse performance. And I will say the performance isn't going to win him an Oscar. It's not going to get him nominated for an Oscar. But I will say if the year was a lot weaker, I think he could have got in, because this performance is some of the best I've seen from him in probably the last 5 years. He plays a true lawyer. It's a true story. I didn't know about the lawyer before this movie, but the lawyer defeats all these big companies, helps out the poor a lot, and I thought the lawyer in this movie was pretty cool. True story, I really got along with it, because some true stories don't work with me, but Tommy Lee Jones is also in this movie. I don't really see him much anymore. He's really not in a lot of movies. He's pretty good in this movie, but he doesn't really do too much. I would say his character really isn't really, standing up and fighting a lot because it isn't really that kind of movie. But Jamie Foxx's character is really good, and the movie is really fast-paced, but I will say even though it is fast-paced, I think that it is 15-20 minutes too long. It is one of the most underrated movies of the year, because it did come on Amazon Prime. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but I will say The Burial is a good movie. Next up is Old Dads. This is directed by Bill Burr, and he stars in it with some other co-stars that I do know. And this one is just focusing on old dads, trying to fit into the new society norms of like Gen Z and all that. And I didn't care about this movie too much. It came out on the same day as Killers of the Fire Moon, and you can really see that those movies are really total opposites of quality and story. And Old Dads is so lifeless and so boring. I wrote my Letterboxd review and it said maybe I would have cared if I was either old or a dad, and I'm neither. I'm not an old dad or either of these. So if you're like an old dad, or you are a dad, maybe you'll like this movie. But I didn't care for it. I thought it was really stupid, and none of the jokes really landed for me. Bill Burr is sometimes really funny for me. I thought this movie was just written really poorly, and the performances were okay, but it's not really going to help when you have a story that just isn't great. So Old Dads is going in the bad tier. Next up is Fair Play with Phoebe Dynevor and Alden Ehrenreich, and this one is a new erotic thriller that launched on Netflix earlier this month. And if you haven't seen it, I would tell you right now to go check it out. It is really awesome. One of the best movies I've seen this year. Not top 5, not top 10, but top 15 of the year, I would say. I love the story. I loved each performance by Phoebe and Alden. They were excellent in this film. Alden Ehrenreich is kind of owning this year with this, Oppenheimer, and Cocaine Bear. He's awesome in every single one of these films. I think he's a really underrated actor. Phoebe Dynevor, this is like the first thing I've seen her in. I know she's in Bridgerton. I don't really watch that show, but her performance in here was legendary. Probably my favorite performance by an actress this year, but I haven't seen a lot of movies like Anatomy of a Fall, Poor Things. Actually, probably my second favorite actress of the year because Lily Gladstone is my number 1 now. But man, those performances were electric in this movie. They really brought it all. You know, they have big, loud yelling scenes in this one, and I really sold them as like a couple that's very angry at each other because, you know, it kind of focuses on the dynamics of gender roles in a workplace, and I feel like it does that very well. You know, it focuses on like weak men, you know, powerful women. I really like this story a lot, and it's a really great Netflix film, but it is rated R, so don't watch it if you're too young. That's all I'd say, but Fair Play is a great film. Next up is Totally Killer. I would say this is the only good horror film of the month, which is pretty disappointing to say, but this one has Kiernan Shipka, and it launched on Amazon Prime Video, and it kind of is like a play on Back to the Future, kind of like a horror-esque movie where she has to travel back to the future, you know, to stop her mom from getting killed. And I really did love the story concept of this one because I'm a big Back to the Future fan. The original is one of my favorites. The first one, so amazing. Love that movie a lot, and this one does take a lot from that movie, and I think that this one works a lot in that range, but I feel like this one could have included more violence, more kills, because it goes a little weaker on the kills for some more comedy. Not all the comedy landed for me, some of it did. Kiernan Shipka, you know, carries this film a lot. I didn't know her a lot before this movie, but she is amazing in this movie. I watched some of Sabrina, but I kind of gave up on the show, but she was fantastic in it. Hopefully she gets some more major roles, like it's some movies that go to the movie theater, because she deserves it. You know, I think she should hop off streaming, try to go for those major movies, because she is really great in this movie. You know, the killer maybe is a little for me. You know, the reveal of the character didn't really work for me that much, but I'm not really caught up on that too much, so Totally Killer going in the good tier. Next up is The Royal Hotel. This is from Neon. It didn't go to my theater circuit, so I caught it on digital, but this one is very underrated. This one will probably serve as one of the most underrated movies of the year, just like The Burial, but I think this one is even better. It has Jessica Henwick in it and Julia Gardner, and they're both amazing in this one. Keep them booked and busy. I love them so much as actresses. I think they all do a great job on their movies. And this one has a very interesting story, but it's very cool because it's a thriller. You know, they're going to Australia, and it's a very unknown place, unknown location. These two girls are working in this bar, and, you know, a lot of men go to that bar, and it's kind of focusing on, like, you know, violence and, you know, these men trying to take advantage of them, and they're trying to, like, stay clear of it. It's a very scary film at sometimes because you're kind of worrying for these two characters. I don't really want to give much away because there are pretty intense moments in this one with some of these characters, and I really did love the feel of this movie. You know, it feels like you're really trapped in this one place. You can't get out, can't leave, and I really liked it as a thriller. It's a very short movie, only an hour and a half, moves great, the pace is excellent. You don't feel the runtime at all. You don't feel like it's too long. You get the whole story, has some violence in there, but, you know, it's there for a reason. And as I said, the performances were amazing. Julia Gardner is one of my favorites from Ozark. She was like one of the best parts of that show, along with Jason Bateman, and I hope she's finally getting more roles after that, and this is just showing it. But not a lot of people saw this movie because Neon does a horrible job with releasing their movies in the theaters. So if you have a chance, watch this one on digital. It is really good. So The Royal Hotel is going in the great tier. Now let's rank them all. We have no terrible movies, but I was tempted to put some in the terrible tier because some of them are pretty bad. But Pet Sematary Bloodlines is going to be the worst movie of the year. I will say The Exorcist Believer, I'm fine with placing that in second place. Actually, no, Exorcist Believer is not that great. I'll put Pain Hustlers in first, then I'll put Dicks the Musical, then Old Dads, then The Exorcist Believer, because those two horror movies just didn't work for me at all. The okay tier, Five Nights at Freddy's, stays at the top. You know, it's almost at the good tier, but I wish it was just scarier. I wish it was rated R. It could have worked so much more. Totally Killer is going to go above The Burial because I feel like it's more fun. You know, Kiernan Shipka brings along a lot of charisma in her performance. The great tier, The Royal Hotel, No, I'm gonna keep Fair Play above the Royal Hotel because I feel like it's a more intense kind of thriller, erotic thriller, and I like those a lot. And the amazing tier, the only one there is Killers of the Flower Moon. This month I said was very disappointing in the intro, and it kind of shows, you know, we have a lot of bad movies this month. I don't really go into them thinking they're gonna be bad, but most of them are pretty bad. Only one amazing movie, only two great movies, so hopefully, as I said, November is better because we have a lot more movies in November coming. I cannot wait because we have a lot more, you know, good movies I've seen from critics that I've already seen them. But look out for my new reviews coming out in November. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what movies did you watch this month? What were your favorite movies of the month? What were your least favorite movies of the month? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.